Good morning, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. Good morning, legal AFers. Good morning, Midas Mighty. We are in day 14, week 4 of Trump's criminal trial. Cross-examination of Stormy Daniels will be taking place first thing in the morning. That's where we left off on Tuesday. Of course, you now know from watching our coverage that there is no trial on Wednesdays. The court is dealing with its other cases on Wednesday. So Donald Trump had a day off, and he spent his day off, I think, at a hosting an NFT event at Mar-a-Lago, where people who purchased those weird NFT cards were invited there. Very strange stuff. But here's what happened on day 13 on Tuesday, just to refresh everybody's recollection. On day 13, Trump made a post referencing witnesses who are going to be testifying. That was our first indication that it was going to be a very stormy Tuesday. Donald Trump deleted the post saying how unfair it is that witnesses are testifying against him. It's kind of what happens at a trial. Then Donald Trump's lawyers, once they learned that Stormy Daniels would be taking the stand, they objected to Justice Merchan of any reference to Donald Trump having sex with Stormy Daniels. Justice Merchan put limitations on the extent of which that could be discussed, although, as I'll mention in a little bit, Donald Trump's lawyers didn't really object when there was a lot of questions being asked on direct examination of Stormy Daniels. But before Stormy Daniels took the stand, you had Sally Franklin. She's the vice president at Penguin Random House, and she authenticated Donald Trump's books. Donald Trump would not authenticate the books that he wrote. We're not talking about the books and records of the Trump organizations. That was earlier in the week with Jeff McConney and Donald Trump's accounts payable head. Jeff McConney was the controller. Trump's account payable head is Deborah Tarasoff. They went through the books and records and how invoices are done. But then Sally Franklin went through like Trump's books, like The Art of the Deal and all of his other silly books that he wrote over time, where he goes into detail about his practices and procedures, about how he reviews every invoice, reviews everything. And Donald Trump tried to distance himself from his own books and act like it was the ghostwriter's fault who did it. Sounds like the Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota defense. Then Stormy Daniels testified. She went for most of the day on direct examination. There was a break during the morning recess. Donald Trump just went wild and just started posting a bunch of crazy things. Donald Trump's lawyers came back. They filed a motion for a mistrial based on the testimony of Stormy Daniels. They said it was very prejudicial that Stormy Daniels went into some specific details about their sexual encounter at this golf tournament. And Justice Merchan said, look, I tell you, referring to Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer, I got to tell you, I was surprised that y'all didn't object to a lot of these things. It's not my job to object for you. I'm not an advocate. I'm not supposed to be Trump's lawyer. And, you have to take some responsibility for your own actions here. I thought that was an interesting moment as well. And as I mentioned, the judges were surprised that Trump lawyers didn't object more. And then you had the beginning of cross-examination. Trump's lawyer, Susan Nicholas, was handling the cross-examination of Stormy. The beginning of the cross-examination took place when trial concluded. And then, Karen, the only data point that I want to add that we learned after the fact was this interesting sidebar that took place. And some reporters referenced it in real time, but because it was a sidebar, it was done at the bench. The reporters didn't know what it was that the judge was saying to Donald Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, when they asked that they approach. And what it turns out was apparently Donald Trump was cursing during the testimony of Stormy Daniels, and he was making faces and noises and cursing, and he couldn't control himself. So Justice Merchan called up Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer, and said, come over here. Look, I'm saying this to you because I don't want to embarrass him in front of everybody. But I see him cursing at the witness. I see his facial expressions. I see what he's doing. His conduct is contemptuous, and you got to get him to stop. And Todd Blanche's like, I hear you. I'll tell him to stop. And then Justice Merchan says, you don't understand, his behavior is entirely inappropriate. So, Karen, why don't we start at that point and then talk to us about what else you expect today? Because you and I had not covered that moment. We learned that later in the day when the transcript was made available.
Yeah, that was one of the more surprising things that I learned from the transcripts. And the reason it was surprising is because Judge Merchan is not someone to speak in hyperbole. He is a very measured person. So for him to actually say audibly on the record that Donald Trump was cursing, he was cursing. He heard him use curse words. Because, like I said, Justice Merchan is not someone who would, like me, who would kind of speak with, I speak with my hands, and I can sometimes say things that are, it's the best movie I've ever seen. Like I can sometimes speak in hyperbole. That is not Justice Merchan. He's extremely measured and careful with his words. And that was on the record, meaning even though it was at the bench, the court reporter's typing it. So it is part of the court's official record that Donald Trump was cursing at a witness, and the judge actually said he was contemptuous, which is another word for saying he's in contempt of court. And so I was a little surprised that he said, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to embarrass him. Embarrass him and what? Like embarrass him? No, it's not embarrassment. It's maybe he didn't want to admonish him in front of the jury. It could cause issues with the jury. Anyway, but Judge Merchan is clearly losing his patience with Donald Trump, whether it's the 10 violations of the gag order, whether it's him saying, I don't leave me with no choice but to put you in jail, and then to acknowledge on the record and to put on the record that he's cursing. Again, that was very deliberate on the judge's part. So I found that very surprising that the judge would actually say that, and that Donald Trump was doing that. I mean, control yourself and control your witness, or control your defendant, I should say. Yeah, so that was sort of interesting.
And Karen, the jury's seeing that. I mean,
well, yeah, if the judge could see it and hear it, the jury can see it and hear it. That's not a huge courtroom.
And I heard there was a moment too, I think Norm Eisen reported and others reported it, where when Stormy Daniels was recounting when Donald Trump initially invited her to the room and she said, F no, that a number of the jury's faces like lit up and smiled at Stormy saying that. And so before going over what you expect, perhaps you can share your experience as a prosecutor, that why this experience of a jury being there and kind of living this and seeing these small nuances every day kind of really matters. And it's just so different than even when, you have like the right-wing propaganda out there and other media saying like that these trials have a life of their own that they take, right?
Yeah, look, there's nothing more important than the jury. They're the ones who are making the in some ways, as lawyers, you're taught to really respect the judge, and you're talking to the judge. You don't want to upset the judge. You don't want to do anything that can, the judge is the boss, right, of the entire event. But the jury is the one making the decision. So everything you're doing is to the jury, for the jury, and about the jury. And the one thing I have learned about juries is they are attuned to everything. They pay attention to things you had no idea about. I did a trial once that was so stressful. It was 5 defendants, triple murder. I mean, it was so stressful that I lost a lot of weight during the trial. And at the end, the jury, after the verdict, they wanted to speak to me. And their question was, are you okay? Like, you clearly were so stressed and lost weight. And I mean, they pay attention to everything. They become really invested in it. They also really want to get it right. They pay attention to things that are objected to, not objected to facial expressions, to who shows up in the courtroom for the defendant or for the witnesses. They don't miss anything. And so if you think that you're getting anything over on a jury, you're not. And the one thing they have is incredible bullshit detectors. It's all about authenticity, getting to the truth, and doing the right thing. And so if in any way you're trying to put on a show or get one over on a jury, at least a Manhattan jury, they see through that so quickly because they believe in doing the right thing without any partisanship, without bias. I mean, that's the part of jury selection is you get rid of the people who have agendas and you're looking for people who want to do the right thing and really listen to the evidence, follow the facts, and follow the law. And if and frankly, they will absolutely punish you if you try to do anything different than that. So I expect that this is a serious jury. They, by all accounts of everyone in the courtroom, they're paying attention and they're going to try to get it right. They are not trying to in any way railroad anybody or get over on anybody. They believe, they're public. This is the greatest public service you can do is serve on jury duty. And just in general, people who try to get out of jury duty, I suggest don't try to get out of it. Imagine if you were ever being judged. Wouldn't you want good people to sit and listen to the evidence, right? So it's a really important thing to do. And I have so much respect for jurors and for the jury system. And they, by and large, do get it right. So this, everything that's happening in court, whether it's cursing or facial expressions or objections too much or trying to hide things from the jury, they see all of it. And so you got to be careful, on a jury trial about that kind of stuff.
Karen, turning our attention to the first witness today, Stormy Daniels. Cross-examination began on Tuesday afternoon before the day ended. From what I heard, it seemed that Stormy Daniels was holding up pretty well. It was a rather aggressive, but from what I heard, a little bit kind of disjointed cross. But Susan Eccles is a very good lawyer, great reputation as a good lawyer there. What do you expect to see today? And how do you think this ends? How do you think the cross exam ends and redirect?
Yeah, even though I practice and have always practiced in New York, I don't know Susan Eccles personally, but I do know her by reputation, and she does have an excellent reputation. So I expect that she's going to put on an incredibly thorough and aggressive cross-examination. And in fact, the media reports are that it's going to be quite aggressive, that they said it was at first just going to be short, but that apparently they've changed tack. And based on her direct examination, they've decided to go a little bit more aggressive towards Miss Daniels, who, by the way, when they called her to the stand, the people they called to the stand, Stormy Daniels, not Stephanie Clifford. So, she's not shying away from who she is. She wants to be called Stormy Daniels. She is not trying to pretend that she's anything other than exactly what she is and who she is. And that is not lost on the jury. She's not trying to pretend that she's Stephanie Clifford. She obviously is Stephanie Clifford, but she goes by Stormy Daniels, and she's an adult film actress, director, writer, and she is who she is, and she's not hiding from that. And I think that the cross-examination of her is going to be harsh. And look, there are some things that legitimately, I think, will score some points for the defense, like changing stories, if her story has changed over time. But part of one of the hallmarks of truth is detail, right? And that's one of the things as a prosecutor you try to elicit the five senses especially of somebody who has I was a sex crimes prosecutor. And so I was trained that when you are eliciting the details, you elicit the five senses, right? Of what exactly you experienced. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you smell? What did you taste? What did you feel? And it's those details that can really bring in the kind of hallmark and ring of truth to any story. Stories that lack detail sound one-dimensional and flat and sometimes not true. And it's the people who can talk about those details and talk about them in a way that's authentic and real that you start to believe them. And you can see that the prosecutors were attempting to do that with Ms. Daniels. They were asking questions in detail that created a whole host of objections. And the number one thing the defense is trying to keep out are the details. But the problem is they're calling her a liar. They're saying it never happened. And so that's fair game then for the prosecution to say, okay, you're calling her a liar. Let me prove to you that she's not lying. She remembered that the furniture in the room was heavy and it was, like substantial, like fancy, nice furniture, something I, who grew up in Louisiana, poor, never had. The hotel room where it happened was bigger than my first 3 apartments. It was, she looked in his little makeup, travel bag. It had Pert Plus and Old Spice and gold nail clippers. She's like, I wish I had a camera on my cell phone back then. I would, whatever it was, 2006, I would have taken pictures. I called my friend and put it on speakerphone because, I'm there with the guy who created Celebrity, Apprentice. Like, it was kind of a big deal for 27-year-old Stormy Daniels, who's just trying to make it in the world, who at the time didn't expect or know that anything sexual was going to happen. In fact, Donald Trump said to her, "You remind me of my daughter," before he had sex with her, which was one of the weirder parts of the testimony. So I think it's fair game for the prosecution to elicit details. But of course, the defense, it's too salacious, it's prejudicial, this is a checks case, it's a paper case. Well, it's not. It's actually not. It's actually, you're calling her an extortionist. You're calling her somebody who's a liar, who's making this up against Donald Trump. That's what this case is about. And the whole reason that he paid that kind of money, look, they debunked the doorman. Guess what that was worth? $30,000. Karen McDougal, who he had a year-long affair with, what was that worth? $150,000. Stormy Daniels, who he had sex with, that was worth $130,000. Big difference between fake stories and real stories in terms of what they were worth around the time of the election. And so her credibility is 100% an issue. I don't know why it's too salacious and it's going to somehow prejudice things that she described the missionary position and no condom. It's not like she was describing the details of his genitalia, which I actually think is fair game. If I were the prosecutor on the case, I would have actually had her describe it in detail, which she did. She said it had a particular shape that was unique. I would have asked for a search warrant, like I've done dozens of times, to take a picture to see whether they're telling the truth. Does it look the way she described or not? Right? She said it had like a mushroom head and it was unusually small or something, whatever it was. And I've done that a bunch of times, especially in child abuse cases where there'd be no reason for a child to know what something looked like. Again, I'd ask for details. Was there a birthmark? Was there some kind of identifying feature that you can say? And then I would do a search warrant, take a picture. The police would go and take a picture. And if those details were there, it's kind of game over, because suddenly it's like, well, how would she know that if it's not true? And again, does it matter that they had sex to this case? No, it doesn't. But it matters that she's telling the truth, because it's her credibility about what happened, why it happened, why she went to him when she did. She tried to sell it to the story before, but it had no legs because it was before the election. At the time of the election, it did. And it's all those details that, look, if she's telling the truth about certain things, she's telling the truth about others. There's a jury charge. It's called falsus in uno. It's like a Latin phrase. And it's something that a lot of times lawyers ask that the jury be charged at the end, which you ask the judge to charge the jury and say, if a witness lied about one thing, if you find that the witness lied about one thing, you can assume or you can find that they lied about other things, right? Credibility is always an issue when someone's testifying, and they opened on the fact that she was lying. So anyway, I'm sorry if I went on a rampage, but that's why the details matter. It's not to be salacious. It's not to be prejudicial. It's because it's all about credibility. And so what's going to happen on cross today is Susan Nicholas, who's an excellent lawyer, excellent cross-examiner, she knows what she's doing, is going to go hard on Stormy Daniels and cross her about details. Fine. But by doing that, guess what she's going to do? She's going to open the door 10 ways to Sunday, and a lot of information is going to come out. Let's see if Ms. Daniels holds up. Let's see if she can handle it. Let's see how she feels being attacked and bullied in front of Donald Trump, who used to be the president of the United States. You know, one of the things they objected to was an insinuation that it was somehow sexual assault. Well, again, if you read the transcripts, which I did, she said over and over again, it was consensual. It was not sexual assault. But she also said, in addition to that, I don't know how he got the wrong message. I don't know how I got myself into this. I don't know why it happened. Yes, there was a bodyguard outside. Yes, he's bigger than me, but there was, more importantly, a power dynamic. But I'm not saying it wasn't consensual. It was just, so she's actually saying the opposite, but she's also saying, look, she didn't want to do it, but she doesn't know why she kind of went along with it, but she's saying she did. So it's going to be, I think Susan Nicholas is going to have to walk a fine line between cross-examination, but also not opening the door to more details. So, and if I was the prosecutor, that's what I'd be listening to is that. But, look, fair game would be, you told this story on 60 Minutes, but you're telling this here, and there's a difference. And so cross her on that. Or you wrote this book and you said whatever, that kind of stuff. But she's no dummy, that's the other thing that we learned reading the transcripts. She's not dumb. She was really, really, really smart in school. She graduated top of her class. She got scholarships to go to vet school at like Texas A&M and other really good schools. She was a ballet dancer. She was a horseback rider. I mean, she's no sloucher. She worked really hard, but she learned really quickly that she could make a lot more money dancing and stripping and adult film actress activity, than she could mucking horse stalls. And that's what she decided to do. And, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes with the jury. It's going to be a big day today, but, was it sort of interesting?
Karen, I wonder if the prosecutors even preview that before Stormy Daniels is called outside of the presence of the jury and say, Judge, look, we of course respect your prior order limiting the direct testimony we could elicit regarding these specifics regarding the sex that took place. However, if this cross-examination, if the position, which we're now seeing, which we thought could happen, but now we know, that the defense is saying that this never took place, that Stormy Daniels making this whole thing up, they never had sex, all lies. Judge, you need to take into consideration on redirect if the door is opened, because then you'll have a situation where there'll be doubt cast on Stormy Daniels' credibility, which could be filled in with these specific moments. Or even as the day progresses, I think, Karen, this will be a big theme today. Exactly what you said, opening the door. Will the door be opened to then ask Stormy Daniels on redirect all of these very specific questions to show that she knows very specifically what happens? And I understand a judge's perspective if the other side's not going to totally deny it, to go, why does it matter if we all stipulate that this took place? Because it just shows that he's lying about everything. I mean, Karen, you and I were trying to be objective. I mean, we are being objective. And if you go back to our past coverage, I mean, if Donald Trump owned up to the acts and said he did it and then just acted like, hey, I did the payoff, we screwed up, it was an error how we did it, I wasn't trying to cover anything up, I just screwed up, I clicked this button, we meant to click this button, there was no hush money button, it's not criminal, we did all of these things, it's not a crime, it's gross, but it's not a crime. That there's a defense there to be had. But Trump's thing is nothing happened, this is all a lie, all bogus, none. And then you're looking at it and you're like, no, you must obviously have been, if that's what you're doing in front of us now, you were clearly covering it all up. And that's where, he's his own worst enemy in these cases. And his lawyers, no matter and these lawyers are certainly far more talented than Alina Habba and that other crew, but they're limited in what they can do if Trump's making them say it didn't happen. I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, look, I think who knows how long Stormy Daniels will be on the stand today. Could be the whole day. And I think you'll see a few more wrap up witnesses. I can almost guarantee they're not going to want Michael Cohen to go on a Friday and to have the whole weekend to have people overanalyze every word he said and to go and have him whatever could happen to witnesses in this case. You're not going to want a Michael Cohen to go on a Friday. So I would assume he's going sometime next week. So I think today and tomorrow you'll see Stormy Daniels take the rest of the day and whatever other witnesses they need to call to wrap up the falsification of business records. But then I think the next big witness will be Michael Cohen. That's my suspicion.
Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, thank you. Everybody stay tuned. Going to be a big day. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel here. It's free to subscribe. You may think you're subscribed to the Midas Touch YouTube channel just because you get all of our videos and you search for it all the time, but you may not actually have clicked subscribe. So click it. It's free. Also check out Legal AF wherever you get your audio podcasts, just whatever device you use when you listen to those great podcasts you love. Search Legal AF, hit the plus sign or whatever it is, hit subscribe, and make sure you listen to us on audio as well. Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, an honor and a pleasure to have you leading our coverage here. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for some more breaking news. Check back in soon.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.